Hey, Pastor, it's Richard Chansey with 24 to Double, and my partner in 24 to Double, Pastor Jerry Lawson, and I are getting ready to do a training for you called The Lost Generations. 8 shocking reasons millennials are leaving the church and how you can win them back. And what I wanted to do for you today is, in preparation for that, is to go out and find a millennial and actually have a conversation with them. Now, before I do that, let me tell you this. The training will fill up, so go ahead and click the button below and register for it. We're going to give you a free 5-part sermon series called Nameless just for registering for that, so you're not going to want to miss it, in addition to the fact that this is a really critical topic that we're talking about. Now, today I'm going to be talking to an old friend of mine, Evan Chasteen, who is actually a young friend of mine. And Evan is a super professional. He's what I think about when I think about millennials. Now, I've already done this interview, so I know that some of the things he's going to talk about in the next 8 to 10 minutes are probably going to shock you coming out of the mouth of somebody in this generation because of the way that the media and the world has led us to believe this group of people thinks. But let me just tell you, he's going to shock you with some of the reasons that he talks about he is attracted to church. So with that being said, let's dive in and get going. Well, hey, Pastor, I am really excited today. This video I put together because we're getting ready to do this training on the lost generation. And when I think about people that are in that millennial age range, I may think differently than you do for one reason only. Because of the gentleman that I've asked to be on with us today, Evan Chasteen has become a really good friend of mine over the last couple of years. I did some consulting with an organization, and the first thing I told him when I came in is, hey, I will build this, but I will not manage it. You've got to give me somebody that can get their mind around what we're doing to manage what we're going to do going forward. And they gave me this guy, and it took me about 10 minutes to share with him everything that I knew. And then I started learning. So as we were getting ready to do this training on the lost generation, this idea that millennials are leaving the church in droves, I thought it'd be a really good idea to actually speak with one. So I've got Evan on the call with me today. So Evan, thanks for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Richard. I'm looking forward to this training you're putting out and learning from you as you learn about millennials and learn about millennials myself. So let's do it.
Awesome. Okay, so we're just going to hit a couple of questions here. So the first one is, what's important to you about church?
I kind of thought about this, and I think the 3 most important things to me about church are community, history, and sacraments. And those answers have drastically changed over the past 3 years. Being a part of a more traditional church, an Anglican church, practicing the practices that have been passed down for thousands of years and learning more and more about that. So the sacraments has made its way onto that list, partaking in the Eucharist each Sunday and being a part of a community that cares for one another. We know each other's names. We get dinner together and the history of what we're practicing on a Sunday morning, being a part of a church that is not making up new things, but taking part in things that have been done in the church for thousands of years.
And that is, for the pastors that are watching this, Evan, you just reached out and punched them right in the throat. Nobody on that's watching this video was expecting that answer. So let's dive, because most of the time when we think about you, good, bad, or ugly, we're thinking about a group of people, and it feels like, based on what the media is putting out and the generation that's probably my age is putting out, that you guys are a lot more surface. What you just gave was a very deep answer for why you love this church. I don't think anybody was expecting to hear you say that you go to a traditional church. When you're talking about sacraments, what is it specifically about that? Is it the community around it? What specifically about that one action is it that draws you in?
Yeah, so it's about coming to the table together. I think about the first time communion was served with Christ and the disciples, and they sat around a table together and they had community. And what we do each Sunday morning is come to a table together as a church and partake in the body and blood of Christ and do something that he has commanded us to do throughout the life of Christianity and until his return. So there's something special in that, and it's, to me, also receiving the grace of Christ physically each and every week. That really it speaks to me. It allows me to I don't know, partaking a mystery. Before we take communion every week, we say, we proclaim the mystery of our faith. Christ has died, Christ is risen, Christ will come again. And in that mystery, and in the mystery of the Eucharist, there is something really special about that. And being okay with mystery, I think, is really good as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Hey, next question for you.
Yep.
In your opinion, what are most churches missing when it comes to reaching your generation?
Yeah, so I think this kind of ties into the first one, history, not making up new ways to do church, but doing church the same way that church has been done for thousands of years. I think in our Western culture, we've really tried to change things up to be relevant. And in that, I think we've lost holding on to maybe what the church has done for a long time, just serving and loving their communities and being led by a priest or a pastor who loves their community and has committed their life to serving them. And the second thing I would say is practices. I grew up in the church, and for 25 years I was never taught about spiritual practices besides quiet time and Bible study and prayer. And since then, I have, in the last 3 years, I've learned of many more spiritual practices that are available to us as Christians that I never knew existed. And it has deepened my relationship with God. It has deepened my faith, grown my faith, and allowed me to interact spiritually in ways that I had never done or heard of before. So the Spiritual Disciplines Handbook, for example, has 10s, 20, 30, 40, 50 practices that are available to us as Christians that I never knew existed. And I think those practices, giving people tangible ways to practice Christianity outside of church, is really missing right now.
Man, that's a huge point. And one of the things that I've often thought is you cannot have a relationship with someone through someone else. Mm-hmm. Meaning, we've had dinner with you and your wife. I know her more through you than I do actually knowing her, which means I don't really know her. It's the same thing, yeah. Pastor. The people in your congregation cannot have a relationship with Jesus through you. So if their means of spiritual communication is only listening to you speak, then they never get to go to that next level. It's interesting to me, Evan, that what you're highlighting here is something that I feel like we've forgotten or almost embarrassed to talk about, the history. And the fact that, hey, this is not something we're asking you to come and do. That's a brand new thing. This is something that believers have done for 2,000 years, or people that are seeking to know Jesus have done for 2,000 years. And now you can come be part of it, because that's a long time for people to be doing something that they're wrong about, that doesn't work, that doesn't add value to their life. Those spiritual disciplines, I think, Pastor, you could preach for a whole year and take one spiritual discipline and create a series around it. How do you pray? And how do you do it? When people talk about doing a quiet time, everybody does it differently. Is there a way to do that more effectively, or just give them one way to do it and then help them figure out their way? It's so interesting to me, Evan, that what you're highlighting here are these really core and fundamental things about what it means to be a believer, and that the church really should be inviting people into that.
Yeah, for sure. And can I jump in real quick? Whenever you said, how do you pray? That one specifically stuck with me. A few years ago, I lost my mom, and everything I thought I knew about prayer was shattered. Mm-hmm. And learning that there are prayers that have been written by people in these books that we have, that are rich ways for us to say words and say prayers that are very meaningful and theologically correct. Having words to pray from somebody else, the saints or priests that have come through the decades, gave me prayers to pray in times when I had no prayers. Just the thought and knowing that I grew up my whole life without having these prayers that are so rich and beautiful to pray for specific circumstances when I had no words. There was no words, and that's one thing really. That's probably been, that's been transformative in my faith, is praying prayers that have been written throughout the ages. So just a quick note on that. Yeah,
man. And Pastor, that would be a great way to invite people in, just to do a short series on how to pray for loss, and do a series on it, which gives people a great reason to invite their friends who have lost somebody in the last year. Everybody we know can think of somebody that has lost someone in the last year, and to invite them into a message where you're going to teach that. Hey, these are incredible answers, Evan. Pastor, from a big picture standpoint, I hope what you're getting just from these few minutes we're spending together is how much value people this age have to add to what you're doing. And what we're going to do in the training is talk about what happens if we don't reach this group of people, and then how do we reach them. Hey, last question for you, Evan.
Yeah.
If you could put a billboard out in front of every church in America, what would it say?
I think the church has been putting a billboard out in front of people for a while, and it started with just putting the cross up on top of their church, as tall as they could in their communities, so people knew where to go whenever they were in times of need, whenever they were hurting, whenever they were in pain, and they knew the place they could go was the church. So I don't know that I would put words on this billboard. If it was in front of every church in America, I think I would put the cross on that billboard. And I think people, in their curiosity about what the cross means, would bring them into the church and what it means to us, and just talking about what the cross means to us, and spiking that curiosity. And I know the cross has a negative connotation to a lot of people, so it's not going to do any convincing with our words. It's going to be the actions that happen underneath that cross, and the actions that happened on that cross 2,000 years ago that would really, I think, draw people to it. And it's Christ that's doing the drawing in that case. It's not something that we've created. It's not some words, convincing words that we've said, but it's Christ drawing people to himself, which is what he does so well.
That's awesome. Hey, thanks for doing this, Evan. I really appreciate you taking a couple minutes.
No problem.
Pastor, if you haven't already, go ahead and click the button below this video and sign up for our training. It's going to happen in about a week, depending on when you're watching this video. We would love to have you there. Space is limited, so if you're interested, go ahead and click the button, and we'll see you in the training.